Hello, hello,
Hello.
Salomé. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I believe that there was a promise that was made about us doing some reviews every 2 weeks. Are
Right.
we still on track?
It was supposed to be every week,
Oh
actually.
no. So you know what's another name for a promise? It's a covenant. So let's talk about the covenant.
My favorite movie.
Yes. So essentially, it's the Guy Ritchie movie that came out in June 2023, which features Jake Gyllenhaal and Dar Salim. This essentially wartime movie is about a man called John who goes into Afghanistan during the Afghanistan war to go find weapons caches around Afghanistan, and by use of Dar Salim's character, Ahmed, who is going to act as a translator and essentially get him from one point of Afghanistan to another. Due to circumstances, Jake had to rely on Dar Salim's character to help him out of sticky situations and even rescue his life. And then again, the reverse had to happen uh, once the Sergeant John got out of the country and he realized that Ahmed's and his family were in grave danger, so he had to go back and try to save Ahmed. So it was a promise that was made and fulfillment of that promise. So it's essentially a redemption movie and also a promise and fulfillment. So that's what this movie kind of centers on. So what is it for you?
I honestly think what I really love about this movie is that like it, humanizes up people and the character because I have a feeling that, like we all need empathy. And in this movie, like two characters are coming from completely different background, and and they have to collaborate together. So also, like, we know, like in the war of Afghanistan, like one of the most, like, very, for me, the biggest tragedy in this movie, which was a fact when it comes to Afghanistan war, that was like a long war, was like so many people, like basically interpreter, like people that they were collaborating, like workers, informers, soldiers, they basically, what would happen to their fate after the end of the war, because
Mm.
they collaborated with the Western allies. So that was kind of scary. And we also, like, a couple of years ago, we saw what happened to people that when American troops, they withdrew from the country, and what happened to the people that they were like stuck there because they collaborated with American, basically Western allies and American people. So that's what I really like this movie because it was like kind of like the reality and what do you do to someone that basically saved your life.
Mhm.
So I really like the fact that Jake, it's called his name was like Kinley.
John Kinley, yes.
Yeah, John Kinley tried to you know, basically they could have just gone like separate ways and forget about each other, but I really like that empathy that he felt. No, like this man saved my life, so I have to like go back and save his, you know, instead of just saying, okay, whatever, the war is over, I'm good, so who cares. So I really like this, like, you know, being a human and have empathy for other people and not thinking about yourself. And another interesting thing was like when Jake Gyllenhaal, he says that when he wanted to film this movie, he was just trying to study about the war, about like a military, like the daily activity that people do in the military, because that he really get into the character. Because you know, obviously, probably, I mean, obviously, he hasn't been into war, so we don't know like what people do when they're in the military. So he did like his investigation to be able to play the character very well. And another thing for me, I'm zero into like action movies, but this was one of my favorite action movies because everything felt so real. And also like the action scenes, they were very like grounded. So I really felt like that it's like, I mean, I actually I think it really like pointed out the Afghanistan, like the way it is and the life in Afghanistan for like, you know, basically like average civilians, you know. So I really liked it, you know. And I think they for the guns they used soft guns, something like that. I don't really know what is soft guns, but it was interesting, but because it felt very real, you know.
Yeah. So I guess going back to some of the points you said, so it's to show the after effects of war that happens in the native lands, right? So oftentimes war movies, when they talk about the after effects of going to combat and going to war, normally they talk about soldiers that suffer with PTSD. And you know, we have many shows and many TV shows, shows and movies that kind of centers around that. But yeah, you're right that Guy Ritchie did uh took a different lens and to see what happens in the victimized countries, and who are the true victims there. But yeah, I totally get that. And then as for the story itself, I thought that it was a little bit slow at the start, and you know, there's definitely the the build up the story was very slow, and then it's, you know, eventually when we got to the point of the transitional point, which to me is um when Ahmed had to save John and drag him miles, and then he eventually get airlifted off. That's essentially the halfway point of the movie kind of thing. That's the halfway story point, right? Um, so I thought that, you know, it took some time to get there and it's a little bit boring, but I think the action shots, they had like drones, they had um like first person kind of views. So that was also quite interesting. That was really good and very Guy Ritchie kind of esque because he's done a lot of warm or a lot of gangster kind of movies. So that makes sense. And then as for the final point, which was you talking about the soft guns. So essentially, I believe these are almost like just air powered rifles kind of thing. So of course they use blanks in these things, but it's essentially just, you know, gas powered guns that essentially gives that little kickback.
Yes.
That's what that is. But for me, this movie um was okay, I suppose. There's, you know, we have other Jake Gyllenhaal movies where he plays a war soldier, so such as Brothers or Jarhead, if people remember that from way back when. Those are also his first touches with war movies, and I thought those were also really good. So he's really come into himself a little bit more. Oh yeah, and he also played a soldier in, at least a veteran of a soldier in in source code. There's an interesting plot twist with that one, so you should watch it if you've not. But this movie, yeah, I think it had a lot of story could have done a little bit better. Action that was well filmed. Music, it definitely helped in some scenes, but a little dramatized in some of the areas. But yeah, I think it's an all right movie.
But
Definitely
also
something
don't
to watch.
forget that there was another thing that was very interesting, that the basically like both characters like Kinley and Abdullah, they had to really like take risk, like to help each other out. Basically, they had to take risk of their own life to help each other out. So that was for me also very interesting, and that created like a very, a friendship and a powerful bond between them. So
Yes, honor.
I really love that, because they were coming from like different countries, and so at the end of the day, we're all human. So
We're all
and I
humans,
really
and
like the
common
message.
events unite us and bond us together, so
Exactly.
such
I
as
really like
war.
the message
But, you know,
of the movie, that we're all the same, at the
okay.
end of,
True.
yeah.
And your word is your bond, as much as possible, and your honor is on the line. So sometimes it can mean between life and death, some promises. So try to fulfill your promise. But yeah. So what would you give this movie out of 10?
I would say 9.
9? I would give it a 6 out of 10. Just because it's not my typical Guy Ritchie movie. I'm used to like Wrath of Man, The Real Rock and Roller, those are kind of or even Train Spotting. Those are quintessential Guy Ritchie movies, so it's a little bit off the beaten path. So yeah, so you gave it 9, I gave it 6. So um that is 7.5 out of 10. Uh IMDb gave it the same, 7.5. Rotten Tomato, 83%. So
Most
we're
people.
we're pretty much in the same ballpark. So all is good. But there is, I believe, someone that was in this movie.
Yeah, like my friend Gary and Fariba. Gary was in the army.
Hmm.
So, and also Fariba, she's like half Persian, half Spanish. Fariba Shay Bun, I guess.
Yes.
She's the wife of Abdullah. Yeah.
Oh, shout out, shout out. All right, I
I
like
guess
that.
not the only no, no, she wasn't like the only woman, but yeah, she was like pretty interesting, like.
Right, all right. So watch out for those performances. If you guys
Oh,
end.
she was great. She was great. Yeah, Fido was great, actually. Yeah.
Okay. And as always, make sure they and and their friends also like, subscribe, and share our material on their channels. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. See you all next week.
Thanks. Bye.